Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
And I'm Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And we are back today. We are covering A Deadly American Marriage. This is a one-part or movie that's on Netflix. And I'm going to read the synopsis that is up on Netflix site. And then we're going to dive into sort of the themes of this story. It is, it's a lot.
It's a roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster. So here we go. When Jason Corbett, an Irish widower and father of two young children, found love again with his American au pair, Molly Martins, in 2008, their relationship seemed ripped from the pages of a storybook. The couple, along with Jason's kids, Jack and Sarah, moved from Ireland to North Carolina to build a new life together. But on August 2nd, 2015, their idyllic tale took a dark turn when Jason was killed in a violent altercation at home. The perpetrators? Molly and her father, Thomas Martins, a former FBI agent. Molly and Thomas claimed self-defense, the former eventually pleading no contest, and the latter guilty to voluntary manslaughter in 2023 to avoid a trial. But their release from prison in June of 2024 reignited questions over the incident's true nature. Was this actually self-defense, as they argued, or a calculated killing? For some, the intricacies of Jason and Molly's marriage add further complexity, including a long simmering debate over the custody of Jack and Sarah, who were 10 and 8 years old, respectively, at the time of Jason's death. Brooke, your thoughts, high level.
Well, I didn't know anything about this story going into it. I was a little bit afraid it was going to be real gruesome-y, but it wasn't. They showed that the crime scene was a little bit gruesome sometimes, but that wasn't the majority of it. But I just kept going from, this happened. Then, wait a minute. No, because the story goes back and forth between, what is this woman, Molly and her father? Did they do this? Did they not do it? Was Jason a monster? Was he not a monster? Was he abusive, not abusive? And then you have these children who are caught in the middle and they're being manipulated as well. And, they kept their initial testimony, their initial statements that they made to a professional who is experienced in interviewing children that was, incriminating to, towards, or lean towards self-defense, I should say. They kept that out of the trial. Prosecutors and then the prosecutors were wishy-washy. They had this one theory and then it didn't work out for them. So they switched to another theory and it was a lot. But it was
they
really
switched to a new theory, their first theory was that she murdered him.
Well, I mean, it was like, but they're the ones who excluded the evidence about the children's testimony. And then, I mean, I'm kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but the case ended up getting overturned on appeal. So they had to then find another avenue, another angle.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really trust them. And, they had very little psychology involved in the trial. I mean, it was such a complicated psychological case. And they had one psychologist kind of talking about issues, but I don't know. It's like, someone please come in and explain all of this. Like, what is happening? I don't know. That's all over the place, but that's my high level.
I thought, I mean, it was definitely compelling and interesting, and I definitely left with more questions than answers. But I really, and again, I'm not saying this is a great strategy or not, but I really go by my vibes of things. Like, when I'm watching these people, who do I feel like I can trust and who do I feel like I can't trust? And Molly and her father always rubbed me the wrong way. They really did. Molly really rubbed me, the father too, but like, they really rubbed me the wrong way. And this is the thing is, I think part of this complexity is that maybe many things were true. Maybe Jason, the father, was a violent person, or maybe an angry person, and maybe he yelled a lot, and maybe he was holding back letting Molly adopt the kids, which personally, I'm kind of like, Molly, you don't really have the right. I mean, it kind of felt like Molly expected, or it felt like she had the right to demand that she adopt these children and all of that. But it is possible that that there was a turbulent relationship. That could be true. And it also could be true that maybe Molly lies and exaggerates stories. That's what I feel like that's what I felt like the psychologist was saying. That's my interpretation of what the psychologist was saying was, well, just because Molly's someone who has been caught in lies in the past, that doesn't mean that she can't be an abused person or woman. So, which is true.
Well, and also the fact that his first wife died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. And there was this link of choking, that the possibility that he had choked both women. So yeah, there's a lot of evidence on both sides, but I don't know. I think I'm kind of team Molly and her dad. I don't know. And he's a retired FBI agent.
Yeah.
So obviously he's very calm, cool, and collected when he's being interviewed, and he understands these interrogation tactics and such, and he could coach her, and so it's like it's almost like they know what to say, or they know what not to say to keep them out of trouble or something. I don't know. So I thought it was fascinating. I still don't know. The answer.
I mean, really, the pawns were the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, these two kids were bounced around and back and forth. I mean, I felt like the whole thing about Jason, maybe he killed his first wife. I don't know. I just felt like the sister, it was her sister, Mags, his wife, is what, it was her sister that was in the house. It was her sister who says, I was there. No, that did not happen. He never strangled her. That's not what I saw. That wasn't what I experienced. So again,
nobody experiences. They're not going to choke your sister out in front of you.
No, I understand that, but I feel like if I think it would be different if it was Jason's sister or someone from his family. I mean, there's someone from Mag's family, and her father also attested to the fact that he never said anything to Tom.
Yeah, but that's her brother. I mean, that's the thing. It's so biased. I mean, how come we can't take anything that woman says? Everything she says is going to be biased. Everything that obviously Team Molly says is going to be biased. And that's the problem, is that we can't know for sure. I don't understand why the forensics didn't seem to provide much of an answer either. You know, I mean, I felt like strangulation or lack thereof. You know, you have one person saying, well, there's no evidence of strangulation on Molly, but then another person says, well, no, actually there is. Like, look at this. So the forensics weren't very definitive either.
Well, I think part of the problem too is that we really heard from one side or the other. Like we heard one sentence from that psychologist who was hired by the defense. We heard from the prosecutor's office. Like, we never heard from, you're right, we never heard from an independent forensic,
unbiased person
who came in and said the one thing that they mentioned was the blood spatter. And it looked like Jason was down and
running away,
and he was continuing. And there was a lot of blood towards the middle of the wall and down. So it did look like, oh, he was down and they kept hitting him. That was the one thing that they could point to, but there really wasn't a lot of hard evidence or anything that would tell us one way or the other. Yeah. It was all just, he said, she said, she said, he said.
Yeah. And also FBI agent Dad, you would think that he would know the best way. If you're going to kill someone, here's the best way to do it. That crime scene was so messy. And it was really weird because Jason basically had his skull just obliterated from being hit with a baseball bat. There's blood all over the place in their bedroom and then the bathroom, and where this took, a lot of blood. Yet the two of them had hardly any blood on them. So
that's weird.
Everything seemed inexplicable. So anyway, so people know what we're talking about. Let's start with the story.
Okay. Well, basically, the story is, I mean, it opens up with the 911 call, but essentially we hear this 911 call where it was actually Molly's father, the FBI agent, the former FBI agent, who called 911 and said, my son-in-law is hurt or he's down. And so Jason passed away. Jason was originally from Ireland, and that's where he met his first wife, Mags, and they were very much in love. And they had 2 kids, very close together in age. Jack was, at the time of Mag's death, Jack was 3 and Sarah was like 18 months, something like that. So Jason was this dad, and he has 2 young kids. And he needs help. So he advertises for an au pair.
The mother, Mags, she died suddenly of what they determined was an asthma attack.
Yes.
So that was the cause of death. Put a pin in that.
Yeah. So we then meet Molly, and Molly says at the time she was in her 20s and she was in a relationship, and she was pregnant unexpectedly. And then she had a miscarriage, and she was ended that relationship and was sort of like trying to kind of reinvent herself and get away and all of that. So I wasn't quite sure if she went to Ireland and then became the au pair, or if she was like, she applied for it here in the US and directly went there to live with them. But essentially pretty quickly after that, Jason and Molly start dating, and they get married, and they decide to come here to the U.S. to sort of start this new life. And her father's from, I guess her family lives in Tennessee. And so they moved to the Meadowlands North. Is it North
Carolina?
Yeah. To the Meadowlands, North Carolina. And they were sort of living, from the outside, this very idyllic life as this family. But as we will soon find out, there were a lot of cracks.
Well, one of the bones of contention was that Molly became the mother to these children who barely remember. Sarah doesn't even remember her mother. Jack did a little bit, but they were so young. She starts working for them. They bond. That's their primary caregiver. And then, a couple years go by and she's bonded to them. And she knows that if something happened to Jason, she'd have no legal rights. So she wants to be able to adopt the children. And he was completely against that. And that caused a lot of tension in their relationship.
Do you think he was completely against it? Or do you think that because from the notes, I don't know, the way I interpreted it, it felt a little bit like Molly was pressuring him a lot to get married. And I do think that this was both sides of this was a very sticky situation, because on one hand, there is a little bit of like, you can't have Molly, if Molly's coming into this, Molly needs to stay or she needs to go. Like, you can't have this thing where she's here for 5 or 6 years and then Jason, you decide that's it.
Yeah, he either needs to marry her and commit to her, or I don't know. At this point, it's too late. It would cause damage if she left.
Yes, to the kids. And I think, and this is my thought. This was just my thought was, I really feel like Jason was kind of over Molly or so about Molly, but he had gone so far in with the kids and felt like, well, she's their mom and we're this family and I should do this for my children. And maybe I'll feel a lot better when I go to the US, and things will be different. I never got the sense that he seemed smitten at all with her.
Yeah, that's true.
That was my vibe. And there seemed to be a lot of, we could read old emails and messages between the two of them. And, I think some of the things that she was saying weren't, I understand she kind of feels like, listen, either commit to me or don't. They are in this funny spot, but, I think that unfortunately sped up the timeline of the two of them getting married. And I think most likely, I don't think those two would have ever married if the kids weren't involved in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? I think they would have dated for a little while and then been done.
Yeah. No, that's true. Because she wanted kids, and here she is in the situation. He needs a caregiver. Yeah. No, it was not like they were madly in love and would have gotten married regardless. Yeah.
And it seemed to me, she seemed so hyper focused on, and I don't, on these kids. She definitely wanted to be a mom. And so I think part of her too, I was kind of wondering, like, how much were you attracted to Jason? Like,
yeah. And she had lied about some things.
Yeah. So she lied about, so they find out that, hold on a second. So they find out that, so they start interviewing at the time of the murder, they start interviewing friends and neighbors. And we hear from Jason's sister, and we hear from actually Sarah's maid of honor. So Sarah told her maid of honor, who I assume is one of her friends, that Mags...
Molly's maid of honor?
Molly's maid of honor, sorry. Okay. Molly's maid of honor told Jason's sister before the wedding, oh, isn't this a great story how Jason and Molly have connected, especially after Mags and Molly were childhood friends. So the story that Molly told was that she and Mags were childhood friends and that she specifically went to Ireland to be the godparents to Jack and Sarah. And Jason's sister is like, no, that's not true. She was the au pair. And that kind of gets dropped. Like, I don't know if Jason's sister went to Jason before the wedding and said something to him or what. But then when they started interviewing neighbors and friends, we learned that she told a story at a book club meeting where she claimed that she gave birth to Sarah. And so when they start learning these things, they determine that she is not a credible witness. Like, she's not a credible person. The father, Tom, also made some claims. He also claimed that he was scared of Jason, that Jason was a boxer, did martial arts. Some of these other things that they couldn't corroborate, though. I will say that, he is a good 30 years younger than Tom. So it's not exactly an even, you know what I mean? I could see how Tom, but he was in the FBI. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to take any of that. If that's, I just didn't get the sense that Tom was as scared of Jason as what he was kind of making it out to be. I don't know. So yeah. So Molly has some credibility issues. And so 13 days after the death of Jason, there starts this custody battle between Molly and Tracy and David, who Tracy is Jason's sister. And so they start this battle with Molly because Jason had a will. And in the will, it said, if something was to happen to me, the kids go to Tracy and David. So the kids were then removed and taken back to Ireland. And it was just like, if you really stop and think about this, these kids are just like, dear God. I mean, one of the things that I didn't talk about was the interviews they did with the two kids. And we see the clips where both of the kids say, Daddy is verbally and physically abusive to Mommy. And that kind of lit something up in me because I felt like that was a very interesting way of phrasing it.
They said it sounded coached. That's not a word that a little kid would use.
Yeah. So, and the other thing was they kept asking like, well, did you ever see Daddy hit Mommy? And it was like, no. So who told you that Daddy hit Mommy? And that, I wish someone would come out and talk about that, because is that really a typical pattern of someone who's being abused? Don't they try to hide the abuse from the children?
When you say they, you're talking about
abuse victims. So we're learning that it sounds like Molly was telling these kids, whether this is true or not, I don't know. But it sounds like what Molly was telling these kids, Daddy is verbally and physically abusive towards me. Daddy hits me. Daddy's, bad, all of these things. Because the kids all said that. The kids said that. So what I'm wondering is if she is truly a victim of domestic violence, of abuse, is that what people...
She wouldn't be saying that, yeah.
Yes. Like, that's my question. Because from what we've seen in all of our time watching all of these documentaries, is there's definitely a pattern of behavior. And that usually women, the abuser, the victim, there's a lot of shame. And so there's a lot of hiding. And that you don't want to tell the kids. You don't want them to know. So that sort of set off alarm bells for me with Molly. I was just a little like, that's weird. That's very weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But also, I thought that in the same interview, and this is the interview that was conducted by a professional who is an expert at interviewing children, there was also a lot of exculpatory things said that would be in Molly's favor. And the fact that got excluded, I mean, that was one of the things that appeal turned on that. It seemed to me.
Yeah.
The appeal really turned on that interview. So I think it was partially coached, but also partially not, because kids can't control themselves. They're going to these kids are too young to just have this controlled, and they said things spontaneously that were exculpatory.
And what do you mean? What's
meaning that it helped Molly. It supported her position as opposed to the prosecution's position.
Got it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this whole documentary is like, it's like whiplash. Like, well, wait a minute, and then this, and But anyway.
So yeah. So one of the other things now this is hard evidence. One of the other things was that Molly claimed that Jason was drunk And the toxicology report came back and he had a 0.02 blood alcohol. So that means like you've had a drink. That is not drunk. And also they found trazodone, which is they prescribe it for sleep. Usually they found trazodone in his system. Now the trazodone was prescribed to Molly. They don't know. And again, we don't know if he took it or if Molly put it in something.
Yeah.
So again, so he's not drunk. And the other thing is, I don't know, it's just the way in which Molly handles things. This is the stuff that makes me wonder about her, because when the kids get taken away from her, she's really upset. So she starts, like, the family wouldn't allow contact between her and Jack and Sarah. So she started reaching out via social media and like bombarding the kids with messages and like sending the number to other people. And it was just, again, I understand that she was upset and she wanted to see the kids, but it's a very frenzied, impulsive way of conducting yourself. And we see this a lot where, you meet people who are like rage texters, or I'm sure you've met someone who's like a rage caller or something. And those are people, they cannot deal with the impulses. And what happens is they cannot deal with sitting with the discomfort of whatever they're feeling, that they have to kind of keep rage texting or messaging and messaging and messaging. And there's something about Molly, like, these are two kids. If you really do care about them, why are you doing this? Like, the kids didn't ask for any of this. They're not saying they don't want to be with you. And now you're bombarding them and confusing them.
I know. And I'm sorry I keep defending Molly. I'm just going to be her defense attorney on the show.
Okay.
I think she's desperate, and is it a good choice? No. But these, again, if she really had to fight for her life to defend, if she was really a victim of domestic violence for who knows how long, and she's put up with this, and then she has to fight for her life with this attack of her husband, and then she loses her children, that'll make you pretty desperate. So,
yeah. It'll make you desperate, but I think there's healthy ways of being desperate, and I think there are very unhealthy ways of being desperate.
But when you're desperate and you're not thinking you're not thinking of healthy alternatives. I mean, she's desperate. Her life has been completely ripped out from under her. If you believe what she says, that he tried to choke her and kill her, and she was able to escape from that and then had to defend herself against all of that. And then she has her children taken away from her, who, she's been raising for, I don't know how many years at this point, 4 or 5 years. I mean, if that, you're not thinking rational, you're not thinking, well, what's a healthier way I could deal with this? She's desperate.
I disagree. I really don't think, I just think that there are different ways of going about things. And I think
she's not in a state of mind.
All right.
I mean, I'm not attacking you. I'm just telling you like the other side. She's not in a state of mind to think, what is the healthiest way for me to react to this and to deal with this?
Mm-hmm. And so, yes. And that is always momentary. So if she had one night sent a bunch of text messages or a bunch of messages one night, maybe 2 nights. But this was a pattern of behavior that happened, over several weeks.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents. That's
if I lost my children and all that, I think I'd be like, going off for at least a few weeks.
All right. Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so where are we? So now the children go back to Ireland. And of course, this is very confusing for these poor kids because, I mean, this is really heartbreaking, especially for Jack. He was like, both of them, they said, well, we didn't know who to trust. Like now we're with new people again.
Mm-hmm.
Do I trust these people? Do we not trust these people? And at one point, Jack did try to reach out to Molly because, you know, he was like very confused about what's happening. So 5 months after his death, they were over in Ireland. And then this is a little bit, I'm not quite sure what the time frame is for this. I didn't write this down, but so then Jack comes, so they're in Ireland, they're settling in. Jack comes forward and says, Molly made me lie. She made up stories about the abuse and she made me say those things. And so then Sarah comes forward and says she was also coached by Molly, and they both feel this tremendous this tremendous guilt because of what's happened and because of all of this. And so then the sister at the same time, so the sister's solving some mysteries herself. So she starts going through all of Molly and Jason's correspondence, and there was a lot of stuff going back and forth and a lot of fighting. And this is the prosecution and Jason's family's theory, I believe, which is that the marriage was close to over. Jason wanted to return to Ireland, and he was very close to leaving and would be leaving with the kids, and Molly would never see the kids again. So the prosecution is claiming this is why this triggered her to hurt him or go after him. So let's see. They both are. So did they? Yeah. So then what happens is that before, during this trial, when the kids say, okay, Molly made us lie, the kids then recount their stories. And one of the issues is that the first interviews they call it Dragonfly Lane. I guess that was the first house. The first interviews that they conducted were with a specialist who works with kids on these kinds of, police interviews. So the second time the kids were when they recanted, they were in Ireland. And so there was a lot of talk about, was that fair, or is that, what's the word I'm looking for? Is that fair,
ethical, professional.
Because they were via Zoom or whatever. And I guess the person they had interviewing wasn't someone who was trained. An expert. And plus he was Jack. We see Jack was sitting next to, his uncle. So there is some question of that. And so it was through the kids taking back their stories, recanting their stories, that the videotape of the two kids' interviews gets thrown out. And so both Tom and Molly are found guilty of second-degree murder. And then they end up hiring new, 3 years later, they're working on their case. They hire new attorneys. They're in prison. They hire new attorneys to fight for them. And these attorneys feel like Molly, just like you, Brooke, got a bum deal. and Tom got a bum deal, and they won an appeal. And this isn't as easy as people think, right? It has to be pretty. I mean, people. How often do people get their cases overturned? I feel like we hear about it a lot, but it's very
like,
rare, right?
I mean, I've heard the statistic that it's like less than 2%.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah,
Yeah. The you get your case overturned.
So
Conviction.
Jack and Sarah very upset that they're out again. Yeah, let's see. So one of the other things that comes out was that apparently Molly was, she was wanting to or thinking about potentially divorcing Jason at some point. She had gone to an attorney and said, "What do I do? I'm in this abusive marriage and I'm worried that he's going to take the kids. What do I do?" And so this attorney said, you should start recording things. Or she said you should start basically making notes of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Notes. It was interesting because the attorney said something to the effect of, you should start making notes of what kind of mother you are and the activities and the things that you do. But what she ended up doing was getting all of these recording devices and putting them all over the house and in Jason's car. And she starts recording their conversations.
Yeah. But then she cherry picks,
Mm-hmm.
which ones, because they play these recordings of them having an argument.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, though, he was being, and this is the one time when they had the domestic abuse expert come on to analyze. He came home from work and she was trying to, I don't know, make dinner. There's some question about what they're going to have for dinner. I don't know. It was a really dumb argument, but you could tell that he, the way he was talking to her, he was being very demeaning. He was making himself the victim. And the expert was saying, this is classic abuser. They make themselves the victim and then they blame you. It's your fault. And you're doing this. And then the kids, he's like, I just want to see my kids. And he's like telling the kids to come in here. And then he's fighting with Molly. And then he tells the kids, go upstairs, go to your room. And the kids are like crying. I mean, in that moment, he sounded like a real asshole. And I'm not talking about just like he's having a bad day and he's cranky. He sounded like an abuser to me. He sounded like someone who's very abusive all the time. Like this is just kind of normal and par for the course. And she's kind of going, okay, stop. And to me, that seemed real. I didn't think, how do you manufacture that?
No, I think I'm with you. I did not think that made Jason look good at all. I think, I do think also there is a difference between what he was doing and listen, any of us could, put a recording device and on a bad day, you might hear us yelling, but, usually it would be like, oh, I'm so frustrated. I can't believe this, right? Like it would be about yourself or frustrated or I'm upset about this or whatever. This conversation between the two of them was very abusive. Like it wasn't just I'm with you on this. This wasn't just a bad day. And just the fact that he turned on those kids really quick. I want to see my kids. No, go upstairs. The kids are crying. It just was all so chaotic.
And there were a lot of times when the kids said under different circumstances with different people that their dad yelled a lot, and they were using language that to me sounded like just child language, that it was not something that they were coached on or there were several times they talked about his anger. He had an anger issue.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
So the recordings, again, I think it's hard to analyze because that was the only recording that we heard. It would be nice to hear. Could we hear lots of recordings? Like give us a week of recordings and then we can figure out what's going on there. But the way he was fighting with her, the way he was saying things, it was very much I'm the victim and manipulative and
can I ask
all of those other things.
Okay, so Jason's sister who's and her husband. They're taking care of the kids in Ireland. But Jason's sister wrote a book about this whole thing, and they showed the book. It was called My Brother Jason or something like that. And I feel like this documentary came about because of the book. I'm sure it was, someone probably approached someone, said, oh, here's this story. The sister wrote a book. It just made me start thinking, who's making this movie? Who does this movie have an agenda? Is it Keen's sister?
Well, I can tell you that it was produced and directed by Jessica Burgess, who she did American Monster and Rich and Shameless, and Jenny Popplewell, who did What Jennifer Did, American Murder, The Family Next Door.
Okay.
So these are two documentary filmmakers who make a lot of these, and a lot of those seem to be on Netflix. So they seem to have some deal with Netflix. So it is possible. It's possible that, these they're always scouting for, there's whole people's jobs is to scout for materials that you can develop, books that you can develop, things that you plays and all that kind of stuff. So it is possible that someone found the book, found her.
It's also weird that like both sides are participating. Both sides are featured and interviewed in the documentary. So I don't know. But the fact that they showed her book and they highlighted that, to me seemed a little bit biased.
The other thing too was I was a little bothered by, I would have liked, since they had Tom and Molly participating, it would have been nice if they asked some of those questions. Like, Molly, can you explain why you lied about Mags being your long lost sister? Can you explain why you claim that you, gave birth to Sarah? I mean, there were some things that and even Tom, like there was another kind of weird inconsistency that they asked Tom, like, because Tom was there with the mother too. And that was also, I think, a little odd. So apparently the parents were downstairs. They hear this ruckus upstairs. Dad says, oh, I'm going to go investigate. And then mom just turns over and falls back asleep, which seems okay. So dad, he investigates, but they learned the way Tom said, oh, we had the day free and we just thought we would pop by and see the kid, see her and visit. But apparently they had they had something else going on that was like his boss, like a dinner with his boss, something significant that they canceled. And so that's it's stuff like that. It's like, what, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
But
like,
they could have canceled. They could have canceled because they got a call from Molly saying, that she was scared, like,
then why not
Jason
say that
had been fighting.
Why not say that in the interview? That backs up their story.
Maybe they cut it out, I mean, maybe they, just like you said, why didn't, there's a lot of things that you said, like, why didn't they answer, why didn't they ask Molly about why she lied? I'm sure they did. But
and you think it was, and you think it was cut out, and you think that's why they're maybe more team biased. Jason.
Yeah. I mean, I think, because look, every single one of these, even though it's a documentary, I mean, it's not like these they're making these films, obviously, like you said, for Netflix, and they're doing multiple, they're trying to make them entertaining. They're trying to make them, they have an agenda. They have a story, I feel. I don't think that they're making these films to try to present both sides or try to get to the bottom of things. I don't think that's as entertaining as, what they're doing here. I don't know. I'm just feeling overly in an overly defense attorney mode today.
All right. Well, I'll keep going. So in 2022, this is 7 years after his death. Then they had gotten out. Tom and Molly got out of prison on the appeal,
Mhm.
and they've been out for a couple years now. So wait, because it was 2015, 2018. Yeah, it's about 4 years. There's a retrial, and part of the problem is what we were saying earlier, which is that the prosecution just didn't feel like they had, I don't know, they didn't have enough. They were worried about, losing, getting acquitted. So they made a deal with.
Well, and let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot. That, after she got, this kind of dream team of lawyers involved, because she had like 3.
Yeah, they had a lot of attorneys.
They had a lot of attorneys who really believed in her and her story. And I don't know who was representing her the first time, or maybe the first time she didn't think she was going to get convicted. But the second time she was like, no, I'm going to fight harder. And yeah, all of a sudden the prosecution, who they thought, what happened to your great case? What happened if the facts are the same? So why now do you think, you might lose? I just thought that was interesting.
So, what do you think about also, so the kids came out and said, well, like life with Molly wasn't always great, that they had pictures of their mom, of Mags, in their room, and Molly took those photos, that there was always this feeling, this is what Jack says, there was always this feeling of fight for love, to be loved. Molly was very attached to Sarah and always wanting to do things with her. And that Jack would said that, it seemed like Molly would pit the two of them against each other. So what do you think? Do you think that's him misremembering or that's the thing. It's this whole thing about being coached. Like, yeah, I can see both sides. I can see how they were coached when they were young. I can see how they're back in Ireland and maybe Jason's family is dropping a lot of hints and coaching, like doing all of those kinds of things. I'm not disputing that part about it, but it's this stuff. It's this stuff. And this kind of crapola, it sounds very like this is the kind of crapola people do, this kind of stuff of taking the picture and then, don't you love me? You want to be on daddy's soccer team, but don't you love me on enough? Like, that rang true to me. But at the same time, you're sort of like, well, I don't know, because.
I think because this happened when these kids were so young, I don't think their memories are reliable at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very young. They have been coached by so many people.
Yeah.
They've been coached by the parents, the aunt and uncle, the law enforcement, the whoever. I mean, I don't think they know what they remember. I think because memory is a really tricky thing. And especially when you're talking about children. So I just think they are confused. They are trying to figure out what happened to them.
Yeah.
And so they're right now they're looking at, okay, what's going to bring me the most certainty and stability? And they're just going to be aligned with that. And which I guess is, with their aunt and uncle.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they go in. So they do take a deal. Both Tom and Molly take a deal to voluntary manslaughter, and or involuntary manslaughter. Sorry. And so Jack and Sarah are able to read impact statements, and then they are resentenced to 51 months to 74 months, which is roughly 4 to 7 years. So because they both had already served 3 years, they were out by 2020. I think they came out, right? I said
2024.
2024.
So they only did like another year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's all they had. And I'm sure, and it sounds like obviously they had good behavior, right? I think they behaved in prison. So I think they only had to serve the 4 years. And again, I think if I was in Molly's position, I would maybe want to fight, but at the same time, I'm with her. She didn't want her father to spend the rest of his life in prison, and that this, now you're just spending another year. That's very different than the rest of your life. So anyway, it's like, I don't know. It's a crazy story. I cannot believe I've never heard of it before. I never heard of this before, ever. But apparently it's a huge story in Ireland.
Yeah.
As we see, it's a huge Irish story. And apparently it created animosity between Ireland and the US. I'm like, I didn't know about that. I didn't know there was all this animosity between the two countries.
Well, I'm sure it was more on Ireland's side.
Yeah.
The US has more bigger fish to fry. No offense to any of our Irish listeners. But yeah, and I still maybe I zoned out during this, but I still don't feel like I even understand how, what the theory, this whole, because they're claiming self-defense. I don't really, they didn't really paint like a clear picture of why they had to defend themselves, what he was doing, what happened. They just talked about blood splatters and how, badly he was beaten. And it's like, okay, well, how did this happen?
Yeah.
How is it that how did we get here? What?
Because Tom was we see Tom in the, in the interrogation room. And he keeps talking about how, that Jason was hurting Molly and that he had the bat and that, he was wrestling with Jason with the bat. And, if Jason was in front of him, if you're wrestling with Jason and he's in front of you, how did he get
the back of his head? Yeah.
And I wrote down, because apparently this was quite gruesome. There were abrasions on his forehead, eyes, shoulder blades. There were so many blows to the back of the head, they couldn't count them. A chunk of his skull fell out onto the table. So, it really was the back of his head, and one of the investigators, she says that makes no sense. It would have been nice then for them to show us, like, in order for these injuries and this blood spatter shows us this.
Right.
And then going back to Tom and, okay, Tom, show us. Like, did Tom even have to stand up and show anything? He's casually sitting there drinking coffee.
Right. And also, isn't it how Tom was woken up to go upstairs was that Sarah had a nightmare, and so she came out of her room and came down and she screamed. So that was weird. So that would have meant that Sarah would have seen what was happening, seen Jason allegedly, according to Molly, trying to strangle her or whatever. But yet I don't recall her talking about that or remembering it. And she's only 18 months. No, that's how
she was 18 when Mags passed away.
So she was like 4, 5.
She was like 5 or 6. I feel like she was 6-ish and he was 8.
Okay.
Something like that.
And this never came up. She never talked about it in the documentary. I mean, she's basically a witness.
Yeah, I heard that too. I thought that was odd.
Going to go off the memories of, children on this.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that it goes right. We're back to our argument about how all of these documentaries are so long, like they're 5 episodes, and it feels like they're kind of keep talking about the same things over and over again. But there are times where it's like, yeah, we need more information. Like there needs to be more. And maybe there was maybe there wasn't any more information, and maybe it would have been better for the documentary filmmakers. I don't know what you do differently. I really don't.
I mean, you can't make stuff up, but she doesn't have any memory, or at least she didn't talk about what she saw. She seems to, but does she know that she woke up from a nightmare because she remembers that, or just because it's been told to her so many times?
Yeah, no, we don't know.
Like, we don't know. And that's what I feel like is a lot of these kids' testimony, recollection, whatever. We don't know. Do you really truly remember that? Or is this just, you've been telling the story, people have been telling you this for so long that you think that that's what happened?
Yeah, I mean, memory is a funny thing. I mean, you and I have very different memories of things.
Mhm.
Like you'll see it, and I was like, oh, I thought it was this. So, and I know that this comes up a lot around like eyewitness
Mm-hmm.
testimony
Eyewitness
and that kind of thing.
identification and testimony. It's not very reliable.
Mhm.
You know, that's one of the most unreliable things in criminal cases is, you know, unreliable identification, unreliable, recollection of, you know,
Mhm.
what you saw or didn't see. I think people fill in blanks with their own thoughts.
Mhm.
Yeah, the brain. Remember, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember. I mean, I've watched many, you know, things about. We have to find like a good show explaining that because.
About memory.
Yeah, about memory in criminal cases and identification, all that kind of stuff. It's super fascinating.
Yeah. No, it is. It really is. And so maybe they just should have focused on what is unbiased
Mm-hmm.
evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess if you take out the kids' statements, if you take everything out, everybody's statements, everyone's opinions,
Mm-hmm.
and you just go by the scene and his body, it doesn't sound like they quite know what's going.
Right? They don't. They
didn't know
what's
what
going
happened.
on. No. And we'll never know.
Yes.
Well,
I hope Jack and Sarah, I mean, they're adults now. And so I hope they're, you know, living their best lives.
they're going to be working through this for some years.
Yes, they will be. They will be.
Yeah.
And listen, I mean, you know, maybe like what you said, maybe the way they go through life is believing that Molly is the evil one and their father was killed. And whether that was the truth or not, if that's the truth that they can live with and they want to live, you know, then maybe that's their truth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm just saying, and I have no evidence of this. I didn't like Tom and I didn't like Molly. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't like either of them. I didn't
really like any of these people.
I didn't trust.
Kids.
What, you didn't like Jason's sister?
Well, again, it's not that I didn't like her, but you know,
felt like she was there to promote her book.
Yes, that's right. How dare you? They put this big, you know, close up on her book, and it's like, oh, what? This is just all about selling her book. So yeah,
maybe.
I don't know.
Anywho,
it was good.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy our podcast, you can give us a review if you haven't already. Those really do help us. We're here on Thursdays covering usually documentaries. On Mondays, we are finishing up season 19 of Sister Wives. The tell-alls are coming on soon. We're doing Poly Family, and that's out on Wednesdays. And if you want more content, if that's not enough for you and you need more, you need so much more of this, go check us out on Patreon. We have a couple tiers. You get the shows ad-free. We do a special true crime and Ask Us Anything for our higher tier. So go check us out there and follow us on social media. We're on YouTube now. Very exciting.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Share it with a friend and two. And
all right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters, handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.
Over 90 of the top 100 U.S. accounting firms trust Bill to handle bill pay processes. Why? Because our tools are built on over $1 trillion of secure payments. We're not just moving money. We're powering financial workflows for 500,000 customers. That's a level of expertise you just can't fake. Ready to talk with an expert? Visit Bill.com/proven to get started and grab a $250 gift card as a thank you. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.